and welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians on the bluegrass situation. It's Cindy House. What is this? A bonus episode with Watchhouse. OMG. Yes, and it is a treat. Today we have Jacob Sharp of the band Mipso, who will be talking to Andrew Marlin and Emily Franz of Watchhouse about their new studio album, Rituals, which is out now. The record was co-produced with Ryan Gustafson of the band The Dead Tongues. The North Carolina duo explores themes of identity, awareness, and evolution. Before we get into that, let's talk about ways to stay in touch. You can sign up for Basic Folk's monthly newsletter at basicfolk.com, or there's a link in the show notes. You can follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Basic Folk Pod. If you'd like to make a contribution and help produce Basic Folk monetarily speaking, you can do so at the link in the show notes or basicfolk.com/donate. Okay, I am so pumped to be presenting this bonus episode of Basic Folk. In reality right now, I am in babyland. I am up to my elbows in diapers and wipes and onesies, and hopefully the baby is sleeping well and everybody's doing fantastic. But the reality is I'm probably laying face down on the floor. I am so pumped that Jacob Sharp of the band Mipso, who has been releasing solo tracks here and there, agreed to talk to Emily and Andrew about the new album Rituals. I'm a huge fan of Jacob's music in Mipso as well as in his solo endeavors. I love his attitude. I think he is super talented and he is a very fun hang. This is a really fun conversation between some old pals. Jacob was based in California, but now moving back to North Carolina. So it's cool to have a little homecoming for these North Carolinians. Okay, so sit back, relax. I know I'm probably not relaxed right now. We'll listen to a song from the new Watchhouse album. This is All Around You, and then we'll get to our conversation with Jacob Sharp and Watchhouse on Basic Folk.
It's a long road I've traveled, it's been wild in its way. I was forged in the night, tempered by the day. Now the way has grown weary, I have a light that just won't shine. And four walls around me, they don't feel like mine. Home, 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 home. Can't you feel it right behind you? Ain't it always just ahead and all around you, too? Now the world will try to shape you till you're nothing but a tool, till the nest is just a wagon and the hawk is just a mule. And there's no time for talking with the ones that you call friend. What a busy life we lead, just working towards what end? Home, home, home.
This is Jacob Sharp from Mipso, and I'm feeling lucky to sub in for my pal Cindy today on one of my favorite podcasts, Basic Folk. Emily Franz and Andrew Marlin were some of the first musicians I met in Chapel Hill at the beginning of my own journey in music, and they have been both dear friends and inspirations to me in the years that have followed. Watchhouse has become internationally recognized as flag bearers of our folk music scene, and rightfully so. We're celebrating their new album, Rituals, today, and I'm feeling grateful to learn more about the changes and growth in their lives that led them to these tunes. Let's get into it. Emily and Andrew, it's great to be chatting with you. Congratulations on Rituals.
Thank you. Thanks. Great to see you.
And good to see you too. It's a beautiful record. I felt really privileged that I got to listen to it a couple of days early in full. I've been rocking it the last week.
I would have sent it to you anyway, but
I I guess I could have asked. And I know this one was a journey for y'all that took some time to find the right light to hold these tunes in. I'm really happy that we all get to share that now. But I'm wondering, I know that the record came out on Friday. You got to play some shows this weekend. How are you guys feeling given the tunes and early workout on stage? How does it feel to have this thing birthed?
It feels good. I feel like part of the journey of getting these songs to the point where they finally arrived was to make them fun to play, to keep chipping away until it felt interesting enough to where you didn't have to do too much when in it, but also open enough to where we could kind of explore the space a little bit. So, yeah, I think that translates well live.
Were you playing them live ahead of recording?
Ahead of recording? No, definitely not. We started playing them live a little bit last year, just a couple tunes, and we were pretty much just playing as a duo. So it was more like just letting ourselves own those songs, but it didn't necessarily feel like super close to the album at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was reflecting, listening to it, that when I hear y'all's records over the years now, they're all like a hallmark to a time of life, because we've shared so much, whether living in the same town or seeing each other on the road over the years. And normally, I think when a record from y'all is coming out, I have a little bit of a sense of the road you've been traveling musically or personally in between and know what to expect. But this one, I had less of an idea of what to expect, which was really fun and exciting to hear as your friend, because I was like, oh, this record's going to be like my check-in with my old buds. And so I'm kind of wondering, like,
how are we doing?
Yeah. What's been going on with you two? I have a good sense from the tunes and from the music, but what was some of the journey that was going on as this batch of tunes came together?
It was definitely a journey. When these tunes started being written, was probably right after we recorded the last album, which was February 2020. So there was a global pandemic. Our lifestyles completely changed. And then we also, had some really hard, weird, random, traumatic personal things going on during these years. Like right as soon as we started getting back out on the road in 2022, probably anyone listening to this might know we were like hit by a car when we were on tour. And that is a traumatic event that we continue to relive and think about and work through. And then I had a really big health scare later that year as well. And I think I bring all these things up because I think they're very present in a lot of these songs and kind of reckoning with fate and mortality. And I don't know, do you want to say anything about that?
That was good. Well said. No, I think all of those things are really relevant to the record and just the processing of it. And so, like figuring out how to share that in like a 3.5 minute song, you know what I mean? That was a big part of the process of like, not wanting to get too specific, but also kind of reach in and pull some of those emotions out, and I think songwriting is so good for that, because where the lyrics kind of fail to describe the actual feeling of it all, the music kind of takes over and does it for you,
Yeah.
So it becomes this multi-dimensional explanation of kind of where we're at.
I definitely feel that as someone who's been searching a lot in the last couple months. This record has a real peace and a real lift to it. And also I was thinking it's really like it's looking ahead in some ways too. I heard you all processing and looking back on events, but also casting this net out towards the future that seemed really full of love and hope. And that to me, as your fan and your friend, was something that I found a lot of meaning in as I was listening to it.
That's cool to hear. Thanks.
And did you hear the songs, like when you started writing some of these, were you seeing them as connected in their earlier stages, or did they start to make sense together later on in the writing process?
Yeah, I feel like it never makes sense until I've kind of put it down and come back to it. And especially that's for each song and the record, like it's kind of hard to know what it's going to end up being, because even after it's done, it still kind of continues to take form. And I think when this record was finally finished and I could set it down and just be like, okay, we're not working on this anymore. Now I can like just hear it and experience it. I agree. I think there's more hope on it than what it felt like during the writing process. It was pretty trudgy there for a second, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of these songs are kind of just like a little reminder to myself to just like, you know, stay present. Don't feel like you got to carry the past with you everywhere you go, you know, and the future is going to happen. And so it's going to be different than what I imagine it to be. And so I think these songs kind of serve as a reminder to not always try to anticipate, you know, especially like a darker side of what the future could be, just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like staying present and happy. And then the future is often turns out to be that as well. So,
Well, I think you captured that well. And I think that's a particularly hard thing to capture when you're in the cycles that we find ourselves in, where we're making this thing and then making plans that extend deep into the future with a release and a full tour. And it's hard not to imagine that you know exactly what's coming your way with the amount that our lives are pre-planned years in advance with the nature of recording. So it's really cool that you found a way to do that on these tunes. Emily, I was looking at our text messages, and we have an alarming increase in messages sent during basketball season.
Yeah.
And then there's
Yes.
always this dramatic end, and we basically don't talk for like 2 months, I think, as we both silently process our trauma of the final loss. But I did have a message for you about this record that I noticed, where you said that you kind of been in the recording process multiple times, and it was a moment where you were starting to feel stuck. And so I was wondering, when you look back on the process, for me, there were immediately some really familiar voices and sounds with Clint and Josh, and with you guys, of course. And then I was kind of surprised to hear another familiar person in Ryan Gustafson. But I'm wondering how the vision for the recording process came together, and the kind of family that you brought into the record. What was the ride?
Yeah, I think that Ryan was such a crucial backbone of this record, because these songs had existed for a while, and we tossed around so many ideas of people to record with, and did a lot of different sessions with different people, all of whom I hope we will work with in the future. But I think on this particular project, we kept feeling like too scared, I think is probably too scared to like take the plunge with someone, because we felt really unsure of ourselves and not unsure of like the musical ideas necessarily, but just sort of that idea of who are we as a band, and what are we going to do as a band, and what kind of record do we want to make. And these songs were so personal and about a lot of like agonizing topics. And finally, at some point, we thought to see if Ryan might be interested in producing with Andrew. And I think it was really the thing that saved us, not only because he knows us as musicians, and it was really easy to get off the ground with him because we're so comfortable, but also because he has great musical ideas. He was able to, when we multiple times in the process felt really stuck, he had a very gentle way of like keeping us engaged and keeping things moving along. And yeah, we're just really grateful to him for working on this.
Yeah, and I think to speak on the fear element of that, it's like an odd side of fear, where it was hard to go down those start down that path with some of the people, kind of knowing that like there were so many things we wanted to try and work through, that it's like we didn't want to waste anyone's time, you know what I mean? And like get so far down the road and then just pull out and be like, this isn't it, you know? And it felt like with Ryan, he was kind of game for the trial of it all. And I think that energy that he shared with that, you know, of just being so open, was super helpful.
I can totally imagine that, and can imagine the uniqueness of y'all's friendship and just a decade plus of making music together and being aware of the creative journey each other was on. It's like, it makes me think about All Around You and how you talk about the idea of home. And there's this feeling of home in the people we surround ourselves with too. And an old friend like Ryan definitely gives that type of comfort and security. And as you guys are talking about the type of things you were writing about and the type of music that you were musical ground you wanted to cover, it makes sense to me that an old friend would kind of provide some of that security too, and encouragement to push yourself further.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too on the personal side was, when we work with people, it feels, whether it's like, management or our bandmates or anything, it feels extra personal because we're sort of sharing our personal lives as well as our musical lives. And I think at a point where we had so many things going on in our lives personally and felt really fragile and sort of like not at our best, it felt nerve-wracking to think about how like introducing ourselves to someone new at such a point in time like that. And so I think it was really comforting to know that Ryan could come in and he knows us as like a musical unit, but also knows both of us personally, and that we didn't have to like introduce ourselves to him.
Yeah, for sure. Did that inform the spaces you wanted to make the music in too?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, we wanted to stay close to home, which we ended up doing a lot of recording here at the house.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the overdubs and a lot of the like actual ironing out of everything happened here at home. And then the rest was at Betty's, Sylvanesso's spot.
Cool.
Yeah. And I mean, that studio, I love that place, man. It's so full of light. Like literally, it's just got so many giant windows that like you don't feel like you're kind of entering into that cave.
Yeah, there's a real freedom in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Inside the walls and outside too. I feel like that's an inspirational way of having set up a place that you can kind of come in and immediately let your guard down and let other things infiltrate too, whether it's that physical light or the metaphorical one too, that it seems like you were channeling here.
Totally.
Who all was, I've seen the credits myself, but for the people who haven't seen this yet, talk us through the crew that assembled to help these tunes come to life.
Yeah. So for, I think about half of the record, it's Clint Mullican on bass, who's been playing with me and Emily now for about almost 10 years. 10 years. Yeah, pretty close. Let's see. Jamie Dick played drums on the whole record. We had Nat Smith do some, like, I don't know what he does, like synthesizers and like sounds and effects and stuff to kind of, like draw a little bit more emotion out of some of these tracks that we had already laid down. And Josh Oliver played some guitar on it and did, some singing with me and Emily. Ryan played a few things. Ryan played bass on about half the record, on the other half. And I think some keys and a little bit of guitar as well. So,
and Andrew, I was really excited to see an electric tenor come out.
Yeah.
When did that enter your repertoire?
I'd been doing a lot of writing on the bouzouki. And so a lot of these songs are kind of created on that instrument. And then we were playing Telluride Bluegrass Festival. I think it was, what year was that? Was that 2023?
Yeah.
And I went into Telluride Music there, and they had that tenor hanging on the wall, and it was already tuned like an octave mandolin,
Yeah.
And so they were like, yeah, let's plug it in for you. It's this 1939 Gibson ETG 150 with the original Charlie Christian pickup from 1939. So like, just something I'd never seen before or played. And so I plugged it in and started playing some of these songs on it, that, like I said, were written on the bouzouki, but the way they sounded on the tenor was just like really punchy and electric guitar-y all of a sudden, It's like, oh, this is an interesting voice for these tunes. And so kind of became obsessed with it. But I put it back on the wall after playing it for like an hour and didn't get it. And then like 3 months later, our good buddy and sound guy, Mark, was like, man, did you get that guitar? Because, those tunes sounded really cool. And I was like, nah, I didn't. Let me call him, see if it's still there.
Wow, fate.
So I called him up. It was still there. And I was like, all right, box it up, send it to me. I'll get it.
That's awesome. Well, as someone who's for a long time looked up to your mandolin playing and has seen your voice on that instrument grow so much and over the years, it's really cool to see how you've kind of expanded that with this wider arsenal of instruments, channeling some of the similar qualities that you bring to it, especially an ensemble on the mandolin. And I feel like the electric tenor fits right in. It's exciting.
I'm fine. It's a big voice, man. Like the way it fits in the band is really different than what I'm used to with the mandolin. I feel like these days with the mando, I can kind of like trade off. Like I can go from singing to just like then playing the mandolin and kind of just like not always falling into the rhythm of the band. But I like the way the tenor can really become part of the chordal fabric of the band and what that does to the texture of everything. So yeah, it's taken some getting used to, especially live when I'm having to kind of like improvise a little bit more. It's a different task there, but I enjoy it.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you guys, I was thinking about the record from the production and instrumentation perspective, hearing some stuff that was a little newer, bouzouki, the electric tenor, some of the stuff that Nate was bringing in too, and wondering how it is that you guys are thinking about that as you transition from the record to the stage side of things, if you're trying to replicate some of those sounds pretty exactly or finding kind of old ways to make these new sounds.
I think we've really tried to unleash ourselves from feeling like we have to recreate anything live that we have put on a record. I think this many records in, we realize that it's going to be a constant evolution anyway. We're not really the kind of band that like books a week of rehearsals and then tours that way for a year. So I feel like we've already played a few shows and had rehearsals, but in no way do I feel like it is decided exactly how we're going to play these songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's trying to figure out how to incorporate the electric tenor and transitioning to more electric bass, which has been a really fun, like, I guess for people that maybe aren't as familiar with the trade-off between those two as I am not or hadn't been clued in as much in the past, but it feels like such a big change to me on stage in a really cool way. Like the bass is so much more melodic now, and it used to be a lot more just part of the rhythm section.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really enjoying e-bass on stage.
Yeah, and I think, the hope live is that there is a freedom there for people to kind of just like stretch out a little bit, and it's like I was watching a Miles Davis interview the other day, and they were talking to him about a record, and this was like in the 80s, so it was a very different side of Miles than what I had formerly been introduced to. But he was saying that the record was just it was like an advertisement, it was like, this is where we're going to start live, and I think I love that idea of just being like, this isn't a roadmap. It's more of just it's a launching point.
Yeah, totally. I love that too. I never heard that from him. That reminds me though of you saying a minute ago that you guys kind of tried to bring in more of that freedom that you guys have on stage as a live band into this record. And I definitely noticed that on Endless Highway Part 2, the transition from Sway into that. When I heard that for the first time, it made me think back to, I can't remember if it was 21 or 22 when we were all at Red Ants Pants in northern Montana on the same day. And that set after the sun had set and the wind was blowing in, and you guys were really cresting as a live band into this like fully free and enmeshed place that I loved. And I hadn't heard that yet on the record from you guys. And it was so cool to see how you capture that. And it made me wonder, as you were recording that, how did you find that space in the studio that I think of more as your stage or live space?
I mean, doing a lot of live recording for the tracking, like the initial tracking of it, and kind of going for some of those solos live, I think was a big part of that. But also just like, there's so much playing that happens off stage, as you know, too, that like, the people that ended up recording with us, we sit around and play music together all the time. And usually it's not with the intention of making a specific sound. It's more of just like stretching progression out as far as we can do it, and kind of learning more and more each time. And, I think when you find those people to play with that you just kind of can be free with, there's an understanding that it's like, okay, if we're not on stage and we're not making a record, then you can try whatever, you know what I mean? This is a non-judgment zone here. So it's like, and I think a lot of learning happens there too, because of just the trial and error that can happen in real time with the musicians that you're going to be playing on stage with. And I think over the years, that's, been leading us to more and more freedom within those progressions and the music itself. So
another side of that too that I was thinking about is I feel like the ultimate framework of that song kind of lent itself to having that kind of moment, because I think there were a lot of songs on this album that were just workshopped a lot more, I guess, than there were like fragments of songs and figuring out, reframing this song into that song and trying to figure out what pieces went together the best. And so I think fusing those two songs together sort of forced us to have that moment of like, how do we do this transition within a song? And it became a bit more of a live moment.
So cool. And it feels like too, the type of fusion that can only happen when you have that shared relationship, Andrew, that you're talking about, that happens off stage and out of the studio, just time learning how to grow together and trust each other. Which I think of you two having had that from day one, basically, although I know a lot of work went into it, and then as increasingly as Josh and Clint over the years became more and more a core part of how that thing can flex to happen on an even grander scale. It's a real joy, I feel like, to be able to see that growth together.
Yeah, thanks. It's fun to be able to reference approaches,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of times I'll reference things we did in the jam, that we never meant to like solidify, but just to be like, hey, you remember that time we were doing that like kind of dancing on the clouds feel, you know what I mean? Which like, and then, to say that to a stranger, they'd be like, what in the hell are you talking about? But to say that with people that you play with a lot, they're like, oh yeah, I was doing that like thing way up high and you were downloading that triplet thing. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we have a very technical musical vocabulary, as you can tell.
But like to be able to reference those things and know how it all fits together, with what ends up, to me, it is kind of like a fabric, you know what I mean? Like it all weaves and folds over each other and like,
yeah, for sure.
And I think especially on that tune where the whole song is kind of a build up to that jam. And it's talking about so many tense moments in the first part of the tune and sway to where it's eventually leading, I'm talking to myself in the song, but, to anyone who wants to take it there and take it on for themselves, just to like that encouragement of letting go, throughout sway until eventually like the sonically we do kind of let go on Endless Highway Part 2.
Yeah, you do. And then it's incredibly satisfying to go from that release that you have there in Part 2 into Patterns, which production wise, feel wise, how y'all are playing throws us into a whole nother emotional dimension. And for me, I'm like immediately thinking of Hot Rise. And Andrew, when your right hand starts going that way, it takes me back to a whole different era of your mandolin playing too, in a really rewarding way. And it's like, and having Emily, you mentioning the E-bass, hearing the E-bass there in that context was so satisfying because of how punctual it was alongside what you transitioned to talking about there. And it to me, it's the perfect album closer and also such a powerful way to put a cap into the lyrical and emotional conversation you were having right before it. It was really cool.
I'm so glad you like that. I feel like someone else has brought that up to me too. And I think it was easy for, some people along the way of putting this album together to advocate for like leaving that one off because it is such an outlier. But I think to me, lyrically, it's like the perfect conclusion and it's so tied into everything else. And I love the way it sounds, but I think as much as anything, it really was just the result of us, tracking band songs for like 7 days and then day 8 being like, we gotta crowd around a mic with mandolin and a guitar and just sing one.
Yeah, let's hash this out like we know how.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, I'm totally with you. Lyrically, it almost felt like like the capstone of the thesis of the record, where it's almost like there's two little mantras there you can hold on to with the love is real, it's everywhere. And also there's such a simple profoundness in something, all the little patterns that lead us home through our lives. And those two moments had me reflecting back immediately on the things you've been talking about previously. So I'm happy it was included.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's funny you reference Hot Rise, because that bass that Ryan ended up playing on it was the original Hot Rise bass.
No shit.
Yeah, our buddy Jerry ended up getting
I
old
forgot
60s P bass.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So good ear.
It's a good ear.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. I was wondering about, to be willing to take some of the, like, I guess it's the risk almost of finding a new way for these songs to fit together. You have to break patterns to do that. Like we go into having made records with similar people, having played a lot of music with the same people on stage. Of course, we form assumptions and ways of communicating that you have to work to overcome. And I was wondering, as you kind of got to the end of this record, both like, how did you know it was done, given the journey that you had taken with it? And also, what were some of those patterns for you guys that have remained? Like, what are some of the things that, as you look back, even amidst this change and a lot of questioning and new understandings, what are some of the things that you're holding on to?
I don't know. We let go of a lot on this one, I think. So it's hard to know what we're holding on to. I think one thing that's sticking throughout this process is the admission of those patterns is a big step towards overcoming them and sharing them, or like sharing a new approach, just to be like, look, I know I've been this way in the past, or like we've approached this thing this way in the past. And I'm specifically asking everyone not to do that this time. You know what I mean? Just to kind of get the unspoken parts of this whole machine kind of out in the open, to where there's not really a self-consciousness that exists between old friends and like musicians, because I think so much of playing music can be just totally derailed by self-consciousness and not really knowing where people are at, in terms of like, it's such a display of knowledge and practice and taste, and so I think to like kind of throw it out there that like, hey, look, I don't practice as much as I should. I don't have as much knowledge as I'd like to. And this is probably cheesy, but
Here we are.
Here we are. So let's just do it, and like, let's not really second guess it. Let's just do it. And so that was a big help for me on this record, to just kind of lay it out there that way and accept the energies that came back, and kind of just move forward with the breaking of a lot of patterns, and that's been a huge help outside of music for me as well.
I can imagine that's the hard work of life, is noticing those things, and instead of ignoring them, encountering and trying to really go deep in understanding and let change happen from there. And it seems like there's been a lot of work that has informed how it is that you could have that freedom musically too. And it's really cool to see. I was thinking ahead of listening, when I just saw the track list, I saw Endless Highway, and I immediately thought of early days and just the two of you leaving from Carborough for weekends out. This is like 2011, 2012, right at the very beginning. And wondering now at this point, seeing a big tour schedule stacked in front of you on the calendar again, especially after these last couple of years of a lot of change and reconsidering, how are you guys feeling about your relationship with the road and what it means to sign up for that at this stage of life and with the family?
It's definitely, there's so much more to consider now. And it's still really fun, but it just requires such a organized framework now, and it didn't used to. And so, we'll be heading out on the road with 2 kids this year for the first time. And I think it's for better or worse. It's probably not good for our career, but that was with finger quotes. But we've just gotten really good about telling the really awesome folks who we work with what we are and aren't willing to do, and just setting those parameters and saying like it has to be this way, otherwise we can't do it, and hoping and knowing that they know that we wouldn't be saying that if it weren't true. It's not because of a lack of desire to live this out. It's just different, when you're dragging kids around.
No doubt.
But I think it's for the best. We're not at the point where we need to be playing 100 shows a year, hopefully, as much as we want to hit every town.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I think just getting more honest with ourselves and trying to recognize where to say no.
Well, yeah. And that structure I felt like lended itself to us really being able to stay open on the road, and at the shows and much more. I wish we'd have done it when we were younger, like had a little more structure to the day and to our time, and been a little more communicative with our band members that early on to just be like, hey, this is the time we have to do this thing. So like, let's get in there and do it. And I feel like sometimes, as free as it feels to keep everything so open, it can be really a hindrance to like it actually happening.
Yeah, sure.
But that whole idea of if you want to do some practicing before you have to go meet somebody for dinner, like instead of watching the clock, just set an alarm, and then you can just totally, be immersed in it. And then when the alarm goes off, you're done. And then you don't have to think about time at all,
Yeah, it's true. There's almost freedom within that structure of it. And I've found as my relationship with the traveling necessity of a career in music has changed too, that there's something beautiful in putting some boundaries in that. It reminds you every time that you do engage with it, that it's this total gift that you get to, and that in that moment, if you can be fully present, you can reap just as much, if not more, than doing it at volume when you don't take it for granted and are aware like this might not happen forever, whether it's something like a pandemic or some of the other kind of tragic things you all encountered in your life over the last couple of years. It's easier than ever to see how it wouldn't keep rolling year after year. And when it's rolling, those are good times to celebrate.
For sure. That reminds me, I think I'm going to misquote this, but I think it was written like 2,000 years ago, so that's all right. But in the Tao Te Ching, where it talks about a storm not blowing all day, like that immense amount of energy and that just like kind of compacted amount of energy into this one thing. It's like, it's an intense storm, but like it can't last for like multiple hours. It's kind of just like has its surges, and then it dissipates, and then there's a calmness and a peace. And I think kind of taking that on with as a human too, you know what I mean? Just being like, I don't have the capacity to be that on and that fully immersed for that amount of time, So like setting aside like, a specific amount to just like fully, be that storm within it, and then allow for the dispersion there and peace with after it, I think is really good.
Yeah, I agree. You're reminding me, I was at Kerrville Folk Fest last weekend just for fun. And one night after all the Peter Rowan had played on Saturday night, and later that evening, there were all these kind of like campfire song circles happening, and classic Texas summer thunderstorm where all around you, there was just thundercaps going, but no wind, no rain, just you were surrounded by energy that needed to be dispersed. And it created this mystical environment because everyone was kind of wondering like, when is the energy dispersion going to catch us, But it didn't. It just kind of swirled around this ranch and left. And there's something so amazing about seeing the profundity in yourself or in nature of energy gathering and then leaving too, and what you can discover in its wake.
Yeah. Well, that was probably thanks to Peter Rowan. He probably just was like, not today, Storm, please.
Yeah, that's probably
we
true.
would like to keep playing.
And when's the last time you guys saw Peter? I know you played together.
We saw him at World Fest. So that was just a month ago.
Yeah.
Cool. I hadn't gotten to see him play music in a while, and it's unbelievable how well he's still singing and channeling certain kind of like, mystical moments of the life that he's led and who he's interacted with and the art that he's made. It's such a gift.
Yeah, his band sounded so good. He had David Greer playing electric guitar. He was just plugged into this little tube amp. Looked like it was from like the 50s or something.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
even think it had reverb on it, dude. It was just like straight, dry tele playing that was mind blowing. And
I don't think I've ever heard David Greer play electric.
well, believe it or not, he's
Yeah,
really good at it.
I have
and
no
then
doubt.
Chris Henry on mandolin, and oh man, I feel bad. I can't remember the banjo player who plays with him a lot. It might be his nephew.
Cool.
But great band, and Peter sounded as strong as ever.
What are some of the like bringing up Merlefest, which obviously huge part of any North Carolina band making the type of music that y'all makes, identity and history. What are some of the other festivals that you found a real home at over the years?
There's been a few. I mean, I feel like everyone mentions Telluride that plays this kind of music too, but that one really is, I mean, like there's a real power there just to the location alone.
Mm-hmm.
But then, with what Sam, Bush, and Bela, and Edgar, and Tony, and Stuart, and that whole crew of people like brought to this music, and the fact that they were so welcome on that stage, and like kind of, I don't know, they were just part of that. Like they were able to blossom there and be the root of that gathering, And so I think the spontaneity and the freedom that those guys found within this music was able to kind of just blossom in that zone right there. And you feel that energy. I feel that energy when I play there. And so that I feel like as intimidating as it can be to step on a stage where all of your heroes play, there's something very liberating to step on that stage where it's like, it's almost less pressure because it's like, because it's that the whole idea of Telluride to me is rooted in musical freedom and like, and expression, And so it's just like, if you're here, you've been invited to be your full self on this stage. So have fun, And I love that about that stage and that place.
I also think getting to go to Telluride multiple consecutive years has really given me an appreciation for, I don't know if there are really festivals that do this outside of like the folk and bluegrass scene, but festivals that do have certain characters back every single year, it feels really, even though like maybe people who go to the festival every year, yes, they do see it every year, but that becomes part of the value of the festival. I think it's like seeing new things and then also having this familiar thing to return to is something I really like about Telluride. And another, like we've talked before about a newer festival, the Green Mountain Festival in Vermont that some friends of ours started, and we've had the privilege to be there every year that the festival has happened since it started, and seeing a lot of familiar friends there every year too. And I'm starting to, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old, but I'm starting to really appreciate that about festivals when there's newness and it's a little different every year, but there's also something really familiar there.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because Andrew, when you were describing finding meaning in the nature of having seen people continue to show up again and again via Telluride, I was thinking you guys are with Green Mountain and your relationship there, you're kind of creating a part of that being created again in front of our eyes. And I think there is so much meaning there, and the ways in which you can be comforted by consistency and also find new ways to grow because of it. And that one comes to mind for me too, of having that exact same type of magic.
I feel like we also just sort of encapsulated the theme of the album. Also, it's like these familiar things to return to repetitively.
Yeah, no doubt.
What kind of meaning they give to our lives.
Yeah.
Well, as a fan of you both as people and your music and as your friend, I'm really happy that you guys are returning and finding new meaning and sharing it with us, because it's a beautiful thing to see.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.
Really kind words, and also I just appreciate your thoughtfulness.
Of course. Well, it was. I wish Cindy could have been here chatting with us, because I know she would have had a lot of amazing thoughts on the album and the music and on the life you guys are leading. But in her absence, I'm really grateful that we got to have this chat. So thank you for joining me, and thanks for sharing this record. And I look forward to seeing you guys out on the road.
Thanks, you too.
We'll see you in Durham soon.
Well, that's true too. Good point.
Yeah, awesome.
This episode was produced by Anthony Cabrera. Our music composed by Dietrich Strauss. Basic Folk is a production of The Bluegrass Situation. You can find all of our episodes there. You can check us out on basicfolk.com. You can find us on folkalley.com or Folk Alley's mobile app. You can search for Basic Folk on SiriusXM's app, or you can listen wherever you get your shows. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe you should share it with your friend who lives in California, but you would really love them to move back across the country and live in the same state as you, Lindsay. I'm going to send this episode to you. All right, thanks for listening all the way to the end. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.